I've gotten some questions before in the past about how to tune my basses and my 808s, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to dive into BeatMaker 3, and I'm going to show you guys how I go about making sure my basses are in tune every single time, and it's really a lot simpler than you think. So I've got a session pulled up here, a track that actually we made in the last live stream, which had some technical difficulties, which is why, ironically, I named this track Technical Difficulties. But here it is loaded up. I'm going to show you exactly what I do with my basses and how I got this to sound exactly right the first time. So here is the track. I'll start it right here from the beginning. Okay, so anyway, that's where we've gotten to with that track. But this is the bass I use. I use the Moog Model D, and you guys saw me do this in real time, live, last time if you were here. And I'll show you exactly how I worked on getting everything in tune. So first things first, you're not guaranteed to have a bass sample that's in tune. What you're gonna wanna do is make sure the sample that you're choosing is something that's been tuned. A lot of times if you're getting, a sample from online, there'll be something that tells you what note it's on. It'll say, whatever the name of the bass is, and then it'll have, C2 or C3, or sometimes it's A, it just depends on what note it is. And you want to make sure that you know what note that is, because I personally like to tune everything to C, and if this sounds complex, don't worry, I'm gonna break it down. It's really simple. The first thing I did when I made this is I made sure I had harmony first. Now, I know this is different for a lot of different people, but for me personally, if I'm gonna have accurate bass and know what in the world I'm doing and have a decent flow in trying to make a track, you're gonna wanna have some harmony in there. So this piano you heard at the beginning is the first thing I played in. I had my chords set before I tried to play in bass. So here's what, this piano I played in. So I had an idea of what I wanted to do harmonically before I tried to add bass. If you start with bass, it can be kind of iffy because you're not sure what you're hearing. You don't have anything to line it up with. So make sure you have harmony or melody first, or both, before you add bass. And another thing I would say, this isn't a must, but try to have your percussion down first, because a lot of times when you're playing in bass, you want it to map with your percussion. Like bass, like drum and bass, they're supposed to work well together, and I find it works better to have the drums in there first. The next step is make sure you pick a clean 808 or sub. There's a lot of dirty, especially 808s. A lot of 808s have pitches that change. So I'll show you a couple examples of that. Some of these 808s are gonna have notes that kind of change and drop as it goes. That one's pretty steady, and notice it says C, that's the note it starts on. That's important to keep in mind. That one's pretty solid. There is some pitch change in that one. That one has a little bit of pitch drop. So you'll notice generally the 808s that I choose tend to have a pretty consistent tone, and I do that on purpose because trying to tune an 808 that isn't really one note the whole time is a pain. So pick a sample that has a consistent tone, and in this case I picked Model D, which has a very consistent tone. This patch in particular does. So far we've got harmony, melody picked, we got a clean sub bass. And then what I do is I start with opening a piano plugin if I need to do some manual tuning. So for the purpose of this, I'm gonna actually add another bass just so you can see what I'm talking about. And we'll pull up one of these 808s. Let's just use this one. And then we'll pull up a piano. Oh, that one's got some vibe. Let's pull up a new piano. Fresh piano. It doesn't have to be a piano, but something that has a consistent tone. And I'm gonna use Ravenscroft. So we can see, obviously this is C3 right here. And we want to tune to C because it's simple. I mean, it's easy. It doesn't have to be C, but that's what I do. So we're going to tune our bass to C. So the 808 we have here, if you hear that, actually sounds pretty in tune because it is the note C, in fact. Now, if this wasn't the note C, what I could do is come in here to keys, and if it seemed like it was in tune but it was just a different note, I can press this semitone button, or I can just play in what note I think it is. But that can get really messy. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bring everything up a couple octaves and try to find it. That's not the same. We got C sharp. There's C. There's C. And it's a consistent tone. You can hear that a lot better. So that's a pro tip. When it comes to making your 808s and your basses, play stuff up a couple octaves so that it sounds right. When I was figuring out what I was gonna play, I was playing it up a couple octaves, and you'll notice that's what I did in the live stream. Let's see. I had to figure out the notes, right? Those are the notes. I played them down a couple octaves though. I found those notes up the octave, played it in the octave, and brought it down in post. What that does is, it ensures that you're playing the right notes, because basses can get really muddy. Unless you're really confident in your ear for bass, I would play stuff in a couple octaves up, so you're getting the right notes, and then just drop it down afterwards, and you're gonna end up with a much cleaner sound. You're gonna have the right notes in there, because there's nothing worse than having the wrong bass notes below it. So we've got everything tuned up. We checked it against the piano, and then when you're trying to figure out what to play, this part can be a little bit intimidating. You want to make sure that you are finding the root notes of each chord. So that's the easiest way to figure out a bass line. When I was working on this particular song, the bass note for this chord, and that happens to be the root because I know I'm playing E. We have an E chord, right? E is in the bass. And the next chord has an F sharp in the bass. So those are the notes I used when trying to form my bass line. And that's, right, you can hear that. That's E. That's F sharp. So when you're trying to make sure you have everything in tune, it's really important to start your bass lines with the root note. Figure out the root note. If you don't want to stay on the root note the whole time, notice I didn't. I played a bass line, but it always ground back to the root. I say always. Obviously, when it comes to music, these rules are meant to be broken. But when you know the rules, they're helpful. Really quick question of the day. Which musical element is the hardest for you to get right in your music production process? Is it the harmony? Is it the melody? Is it the bass, the drums? What is it that's your most challenging part? I'd love to know that down in the comments, and maybe I'll tackle an issue in a specific video coming up. But that being said, creatives, go make something dope, and I'll see you in the next video.